In 1947, an official document was filed inside the archives of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and that document did not say that aliens come from a distant planet. It said something far stranger. It said they come from another plane of existence entirely, and that they are not what they claim to be. For decades, that file sat sealed, and when it was finally released, it had been so heavily redacted that entire sentences were blacked out. The man who wrote it was never publicly named. The agency that kept it has never explained why it was worth hiding for the better part of a century, and the conclusion buried inside it lines up, almost word for word, with a belief held by a secret group inside the United States government, a group that concluded the things in our skies were never visitors from space at all. They were something older, something biblical, something that fell. That is the one question I want to answer in this video. What did the FBI actually know, and why does every thread, the memo, the meetings, the black projects, the scripture keep pointing to the same terrifying answer? Let me show you how deep this goes. We need to start with the document itself, because everything else hangs off it. It is cataloged in the FBI's own public reading room, the Vault, and online it has picked up a nickname, FBI Document 6751. It is dated the 8th of July, 1947, and if that date sounds familiar, it should, because it lands in the exact window when the word flying saucer was first detonating across American newspapers. Roswell was that same month. The country was looking up and panicking. And in the middle of that panic, a letter arrives, and it gets filed, and it makes a series of claims so specific that they almost read like a briefing. The document lays out what it calls the facts about the discs that people were seeing in the sky. And here is where it stops sounding like anything you would expect from a 1940s government file. It states that some of the flying discs are not built of solid matter in the way we understand it. It describes the beings associated with them as coming from what it calls an etheric plane, not a planet, not a star system, but another layer of reality sitting alongside our own. It claims these beings can move between that plane and ours. It describes them as tall, as human in appearance, and it claims they carry a kind of radiant energy that can disintegrate anything in its path. Other planets, it says, are not the answer. Other dimensions are. Now sit with that for a second, because the framing matters. We have been trained for 70 years to think the UFO question is a space question. Little green men, distant galaxies, ships crossing the void. But the oldest official paper trail does not say that. The oldest paper trail says these things come from a realm laid over our own, that they only look human, and that they are operating by means we would call supernatural. The space story is the new story. The other dimension story is the original one. And that single inversion is the thread we are going to pull on for the rest of this video. Because once you accept that the things in the sky might not be from the sky, you have to start asking a much older question. Then what are they? And let's be precise about the timeline, because the title of this video isn't a number I picked for drama. That memo was filed in 1947. It was not declassified and posted for the public to read until 2010, 63 years of silence on that single page alone. But the phenomenon it describes, the official record of the government collecting and burying reports of these beings, runs from the late 1930s straight through to today. And when you count from the moment the modern machinery of secrecy first locked around this question to the moment you're watching this, you are looking at roughly 86 years of an institution sitting on the same answer and choosing, year after year, administration after administration, not to say it out loud. 86 years is not an accident. 86 years is a policy. But before we go further, I want you to notice something about how this document was handled, because the handling tells you as much as the contents. If FBI document 6751 were nonsense, just one more crank letter from one more man who had read too many pulp magazines, there is a very simple thing the Bureau does with it. They throw it away. Crank mail arrived at the FBI by the sackload. It got tossed, or it got a polite non-reply, and it vanished. This one didn't. This one got filed, kept, and carried forward across decades, and when the public finally got to see it, somebody had gone through it with a marker first. You don't redact a crackpot. You redact something you have decided the public should not read in full. And that is the first crack in the official story, the quiet admission, in the form of black ink, that there was something here worth concealing. Hold on to that, because it is going to come back. Here's where it gets stranger. Because that 1947 document does not exist in a vacuum. Decades later, a British UFO researcher named Nick Redfern published the results of a long investigation into a group he says operates inside the American defense and intelligence world. The group has a name. They are called the Collins Elite, and according to Redfern's reporting, the Collins Elite reached a conclusion that almost nobody in mainstream UFO circles wanted to hear. They decided that the entities behind the UFO phenomenon were not extraterrestrials at all. They were deceptive. They were spiritual. In the group's own framing, they were demonic fallen angels wearing the costume of space travelers in order to be believed by a modern, scientific, skeptical public that would laugh at the word demon, but would lean forward at the word alien. Think about how elegant that deception would be if it were true. You want to approach a civilization that has stopped believing in the supernatural. You can't show up looking like the thing in its old scriptures. It has been taught to dismiss that. So you show up as the thing it's ready to accept. You wrap an ancient phenomenon in a science fiction wrapper, and suddenly an educated population that would never kneel before an angel will happily form research committees, build landing pads, and chase your lights across the desert. The Collins Elite's claim, as it's been reported, is that the alien framing isn't a discovery, it's a disguise. And now go back and read FBI document 6751 one more time, with that in your head. Beings from another plane, beings that only appear human, beings that move between worlds. The 1947 memo and the Collins Elite, separated by decades and by an entire ocean of UFO mythology, are describing the same creature. One calls it etheric, one calls it demonic. But strip the vocabulary away and the shape underneath is identical, not from space, only pretending to be human, coming from somewhere adjacent to us rather than light years away. Two sources that should have nothing to do with each other, pointing at the exact same thing. I want to be fair here, the way a real investigation has to be. Redfern himself has been careful to say that he is reporting what this group apparently believed, not declaring it proven. The Collins Elite story is contested. There is no stamped, notarized government press release confirming a demon task force. But notice what we are actually building. We are not leaning on one source and asking you to swallow it whole. We are watching independent threads, a 1947 federal document, and a much later account of an internal government faction converge on a single, specific, deeply uncomfortable idea. That convergence is the story. And it is about to get a lot harder to wave away because the next thread isn't a memo or a book, it's a president. February 1955. Dwight D. Eisenhower, the most powerful man on Earth, a five-star general who had commanded the liberation of a continent, is on a quail hunting trip in Georgia. That's the official line. And then, for roughly a day and a half, the President of the United States effectively disappears from public view. The press is told he's under the weather, a minor thing, the sniffles, nothing to worry about. Reporters grumble and move on. But according to a story that has circulated for decades, the sniffles were a cover. According to the story, Eisenhower's plane quietly slipped into Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, and the reason a president would be smuggled into a desert air base in secret was not medical. The account claims that on that base, on that morning, craft descended onto the runway, not human aircraft. The story says one object landed and another hovered, and that Eisenhower was brought out to meet whatever had arrived. The meeting, by this telling, lasted somewhere around 45 minutes. And then the president got back on his plane, the cover story held, and the world never knew that its most powerful leader had supposedly just sat across from a non-human intelligence. Now I know exactly how that sounds. And the honest position is that there is no photograph, no signed transcript, no confession that nails this down. It lives in UFO folklore, passed between researchers, one of whom said he traced it to a former airman he found credible. It is a rumor. I'm telling you it's a rumor on purpose, because I'm not going to insult you by pretending otherwise. But here is why the rumor refuses to die, and why it belongs in this story specifically. The Holloman account is not just a president met an alien. Look at what the deeper versions of the story claim was actually discussed. They claim it was a negotiation, an arrangement, an agreement between a human government and a non-human power, made quietly, made off the books, made by a man who then went back to a press pool and lied about having a cold. And if the Collins elite were right, if the things doing the negotiating were not benevolent star travelers but deceivers, fallen and ancient and very good at appearing to be exactly what you hope they are, then a secret 1955 handshake stops being a hopeful first contact moment. It becomes something closer to a bargain struck in the dark with something that had every reason to lie. The question the rumor leaves hanging is not, did Eisenhower meet someone? The question is, if he did anyone on our side actually know what they were shaking hands with? Hold that thought, because to understand why a government might enter a meeting like that already afraid, we have to go back further still, back before Roswell, back to the very edge of the map, to a place where, depending on who you ask, the United States military didn't negotiate with these things, it fought them. The operation was real, and you can look it up under its real name, Operation High Jump. The winter of 1946 into 1947, the U.S. Navy sent a staggering force to Antarctica, nearly 5,000 men, 13 ships, dozens of aircraft under the command of one of the most famous explorers in American history, Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Officially, it was a research and training mission. Establish a base. Map the ice. Test men and equipment in the most hostile environment on the planet. That's the part everyone agrees on. But the operation ended early. A mission that was provisioned and announced as a long campaign was wrapped up and pulled out far sooner than planned, and that abrupt exit is the seed of everything that grew afterward. Because in the years since, a theory has hardened around Operation High Jump that goes like this. The task force didn't leave the ice early because of bad weather. It left because it ran into something it could not beat. The theory claims that down at the bottom of the world, the Navy encountered craft fast, silent, rising out of the water and the ice, flying pole to pole at speeds nothing human could match, and that these craft tore through the expedition badly enough to force a retreat. Some versions tie it to rumors of a hidden Nazi redoubt. But the wilder and, for our story, the more important version says the things that drove off the United States Navy were not built by any nation on Earth. And then there are Byrd's own words, which conspiracy researchers have clung to for 70 years. After the operation, the admiral was quoted in the press making remarks about the need to defend against hostile aircraft capable of flying from one pole to the other at incredible speed. Now, the skeptics have a perfectly reasonable read on that. A Cold War admiral talking in general terms about future threats and the strategic importance of the poles. That's the grounded interpretation, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't plausible. But to the people building this case, those words are a slip, a commander who saw something at the edge of the world and could only describe it sideways, in language vague enough to survive censorship. Here's why high jump matters for where we're going. Regardless of which interpretation you land on, if you put it on the timeline, the order of events is devastating. First, 1946 to 47. A massive military force goes to the most remote place on Earth and comes home early, followed by talk of objects that fly pole to pole. Then, that same year, 1947, the saucer wave erupts across America, Roswell happens, and FBI document 6751 is filed, describing beings from another plane. Then, less than a decade later, 1955, a president allegedly slips into a desert and meets with a non-human power. Read in sequence, it stops looking like a string of unrelated weird events. It starts looking like a story with a plot. Encounter, panic, documentation, negotiation. As if the United States ran into something it didn't understand at the bottom of the world, scrambled to figure out what it was, and within a few years had stopped fighting it and started talking to it. And the only document in that entire sequence that actually tells us what the it might be is the one we started with, the 1947 memo that says, "Not from space, only appears human," comes from another plane. Every other event is a shape in the fog. Document 6751 is the one piece of the timeline that dares to name the thing, which is exactly why what happened to that document, and to so many others like it, starts to feel less like bureaucratic accident and more like design. Now, I need to show you the other side of this, because if you only look at the cover-up theories, you'll walk away thinking the government's only goal was to hide. There's a darker possibility, and it has a name too: Project Blue Beam. In the 1990s, a Canadian writer named Serge Monast went public with a claim that turned the whole UFO question inside out. Monast alleged that there was a plan. He tied it to NASA and to a coming world government, and the plan was not to hide aliens. The plan was to fake them. According to Project Blue Beam, the technology existed, or would soon exist, to project enormous, convincing images across the sky, holograms on a planetary scale, synchronized with broadcasts beamed directly at the population, even, he claimed, into people's own minds. And the purpose of that grand illusion was to stage events that the entire world would witness at once. Monast laid it out in stages, and the stages are what make your skin crawl once you've sat with everything else in this video. First, he said, would come manufactured discoveries and disasters engineered to shatter people's faith in their existing religions. Then the sky show, glowing figures, divine apparitions, each region shown the god it was raised to expect, all of it generated by hidden projectors. Then a single voice, a single image, a unifying false god speaking to all of humanity at the same moment. And woven through it, as the final lever, a staged alien invasion. A fake threat from above so terrifying and so universal that the frightened nations of the earth would surrender their independence and beg to be ruled by whoever stepped forward with the answer. Monast never produced the documents to prove it. No whistleblower ever walked out with the blueprints. By every conventional standard, it is an unproven theory, and it's only fair to say so plainly. But look at what it does to our story. Because now we have two opposite-seeming claims sitting side by side, and instead of canceling out, they interlock. On one side, the Collins Elite and Document 6751 say the entities are real, non-human, deceptive, fallen. On the other side, Project Blue Beam says the powers that be are prepared to fake exactly that kind of cosmic supernatural event to control the masses. And here is the thought that should genuinely stop you. What if both are true at once? What if there really is an ancient, deceptive intelligence that has always presented itself as whatever a culture is ready to worship angels to one age, aliens to another? And what if a faction of human power has learned to imitate that same trick with technology? A real deception and a manufactured one, pointed at the same target, reinforcing each other. The fallen thing whispers the script. The projectors play it back at scale. By the time the sky lights up and the voice speaks to everyone on Earth in their own language, who in the crowd could possibly tell the counterfeit miracle from the original one? That blurred line between the real deceiver and the fake one is the trap this whole story has been walking toward. And to understand why it would work, why human beings would fall for it almost every time, we have to leave the air bases and the archives behind and open the oldest source any of these threads keep circling back to. We have to talk about the Nephilim. Tucked into the 6th chapter of the book of Genesis, right before the story of the Great Flood, there is a passage that has unsettled readers for thousands of years. It speaks of the sons of God coming down and taking human wives, and of the children born from those unions, a race the text calls the Nephilim, described as mighty ones, giants, the heroes of old, men of renown. For centuries, one of the most widely held interpretations of that passage has been startling: that the sons of God were angelic beings who rebelled, who left their proper place, who crossed a boundary they were never meant to cross and came down to mingle with humanity, fallen ones. And their offspring, the Nephilim, were the monstrous result beings that were neither fully human nor fully of the heavens, walking the earth and corrupting it. Now hold that ancient description up against everything we've covered. Beings that descend from above. Beings that are not human but take on human form, even human relations. Beings that come from a realm adjacent to ours and breach the wall between. Beings that deceive, that corrupt, that present themselves as gods to be worshipped. That is not a description of a spacecraft from another galaxy. That is, almost line for line, the description in FBI document 6751 of beings from the etheric plane who only appear human. It is, almost line for line, what the Collins elite is said to have concluded. The vocabulary changed across 3,000 years. Sons of God became etheric entities, became extraterrestrials, but the creature being described never changed at all. This is the keystone. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it reorganizes everything. The abduction accounts, with their reports of hybrid children and genetic experiments, set them next to a text about non-human beings producing offspring with humanity, and they stop sounding like science fiction and start sounding like a very old pattern repeating. The lights in the sky that ancient people called angels and we call aircraft, same lights, different century, different word. The ancient astronaut theory, the one that says gods visited our ancestors and were mistaken for deities, accidentally tells on itself. It admits these beings have always been here, always been mistaken for the divine, always been worshipped. It just gets the direction wrong. They didn't come from space and get called gods. They were the fallen, and they have always let us call them whatever we were most ready to believe. So, let me do the thing I promised I'd do, the thing a real investigation owes you. Let me argue against myself, because every one of these theories has a counter, and you deserve to hear them. The skeptic's case is strong, and I won't hide from it. FBI document 6751 is not the FBI's conclusion. It's a letter somebody sent in, filed the way, agencies file almost everything, and the etheric claims are the authors, not the bureaus. The Collins elite, by the researcher's own admission, can't be independently confirmed, and may be more a story about what some individuals believed than a documented program. The Eisenhower at Holloman meeting has no hard proof and traces back to a single source. Operation High Jump was a real and documented mission whose flight paths, historians point out, never even went near the places the legends put the secret base. And Byrd's pole-to-pole line reads perfectly well as ordinary Cold War defense talk. Project Bluebeam never produced a single verifiable document. And the Nephilim are a matter of theology and translation that scholars have argued about for millennia without resolution. Take each thread alone, in isolation, and a careful person can dismiss it. That's true. I'd be a liar or a fool to tell you otherwise. But here's the criticism that cuts both ways, and it's the same flaw I'd point out in almost any grand theory about hidden history. Most of these explanations, the believers and the skeptics alike, require you to start with the conclusion you want and then sort the evidence to fit it. If you've already decided it's all real, you read Byrd's vague quote as a confession and the redactions as proof. If you've already decided it's all nonsense, you read the redactions as routine and the convergences as coincidence. Both sides are doing the same move, building the verdict first and recruiting the facts second. And I think the honest thing, the thing that actually respects you as a viewer, is to admit that I can't hand you a notarized confession. Nobody can. That's not how this kind of buried history works. What I can do is point at the shape. And the shape is the part the skeptics never quite explain away. Because you can dismiss any single thread, sure, but you still have to account for why a 1,947 letter filed in Washington, a secret group described decades later by a British researcher, a 3,000-year-old passage in Genesis, and the abduction reports of thousands of ordinary modern people who never read any of it, why all of them independently describe the same impossible creature, not from the stars, only wearing a human face, crossing over from somewhere just beside us, deceiving on purpose. You can call any one of those a coincidence. Calling all of them a coincidence takes more faith than believing the thing they're pointing at. So now we arrive at the question this whole video has been driving toward. Not, are they real? Not even, are they from space? The real question, the one that justifies every minute we've spent, is this. Why would anyone, the FBI, the government, anyone with the documents in their hands, spend the better part of a century making sure you never put these pieces together? And I think, finally, the answer is the simplest and the heaviest part of the whole story. Think about what is actually being protected. It is not the secret that we are being visited. Half the planet already suspects that, and governments have learned they can survive the world shrugging at strange lights. No. If the oldest document is right, if the Collins elite is right, if the thread running from Genesis to Holloman to the FBI's own archive is right, then the secret is not where the visitors come from. The secret is what they are. Because alien is a thrilling word. It fills theaters, it sells books, it lets a frightened thing be studied, negotiated with, even admired. But the other word, the older one, the one buried under the redactions and the cover stories and the science fiction wrapping that word, changes everything. That word means the lights in the sky are not a scientific frontier, they are a spiritual war. It means the thing that allegedly met a president in the desert was not an ambassador from a distant star, but a deceiver as old as scripture, and that somewhere a government may have shaken its hand without ever understanding whose hand it was. It means the staged miracle Serge Monist warned about and the real deception described in Genesis are not two different threats, but two halves of the same closing trap. That is why you hide it for 86 years. Not because the truth is that we are not alone, but because the truth is that we never were, and that the company we've had has been lying about its name since the beginning. A population that thinks it's waiting for spacemen can be managed. A population that realizes it's been sharing the planet with fallen angels wearing whatever mask each century will believe that population cannot be controlled, cannot be calmed, and cannot be lied to twice. The redactions weren't protecting a secret about the sky. They were protecting the oldest secret about us. Which voice we've actually been listening to, and what it has always wanted us to call it. So the next time the official channels finally pull back the curtain, the next time they announce, with great ceremony, that yes, we are not alone, and yes, they have always been here. I want you to remember the question underneath the announcement. Not, where did they come from? Ask what they are. Ask why the only document that ever tried to answer that honestly was the one they buried the deepest. Because disclosure isn't the moment they tell you the truth. Disclosure is the moment they decide which lie you're finally ready to believe. And if you think this is the strangest thing a government has ever filed away and hoped you'd never read, there's another set of documents, sitting in another archive, about what they think is waiting for us at the end of all this. But that's a story for the next video.